Hey everyone, so today we're going to be talking about how to properly hold your reins. So when you hold your reins correctly, you're able to effectively communicate with your horse and also have more control. And for our fun question this week, why don't you let us know what type of horse you have? So Tucker here is just a POA, Pony of the Americas, and I love him dearly, and I love ponies. So let me know what breed you have, I'm always interested. And also don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more weekly horse videos. So let's go over how to properly hold your reins. So when it comes to English riding, you usually ride with two hands on the reins, compared to in Western you'll see them neck reining, which is more like this. So we're gonna have two hands on the reins. This is also called plow reining. Just so y'all know, you'll probably never use that term, but it's out there. So to start, I use my pinky finger and my ring finger, and I'm gonna put my rein in between those two fingers. So now the rein is to the inside of my hand. Next, I'm going to wrap all my fingers in over the rein, and I'm going to take my thumb and place it on top of the rein where it comes out of my hand. And when you properly hold your reins, the rein should come in to the bottom of your hand and come out the top. So I see a lot of people hold reins like this, where the rein comes from the top and then goes out the bottom. This just feels like a lot less control compared to when you hold them like this. So that's another thing to keep in mind. I see a lot of beginners holding the reins like this. So you'll just want to make sure you're aware of that and correcting yourself. Another thing to note when you're riding is you always want to keep your thumbs up and on top of your reins. So you want your thumbs to point up towards the sky. When I started riding, I had a bad habit of turning my hands like this so that my thumbs were to the side. And what this does is when your hands turn to the side like this, you automatically kind of drop your shoulders. So when you put your thumbs up, it's easier to keep your shoulders back, and that's the correct position when it comes to riding. So another aspect of holding your reins effectively is to make sure your reins are even. So what this means is the length from my hand to the horse's face should be even on either side of my horse as I hold my reins. So if you ride with uneven reins, so let's say I have this rein really short and this rein really long, I'm automatically miscommunicating with my horse. So I may be pulling on this side of the horse's face a lot more than this side because my rein is longer over here. Another thing it does is it messes with your position. So if I have one short rein and one long rein, I'm kind of favoring my short rein, and I'm gonna probably lean more into my short rein than I would my long rein. So that's something to be aware of. If you want to stay even over your horse, the best place to start with that is to have even reins. So a great way to see if your reins are even or uneven is to first hold your reins and then put your elbows to your side and make sure your shoulders are back. And there your hands, you can kind of see where your hands are at. So if your reins are even, your hands are gonna be parallel to each other. But if you're, let's say they're uneven, so a shorter rein will make your hand be up farther than a longer rein. So that's an easy way to see where your reins are at and if they're even or uneven. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how high or low you should hold your hands. So where exactly should your hands be as you're riding? So the correct answer to that question, I like to say, is they should be right over the pommel of your saddle. And not too high, not too low. So when I say having your reins too high or low, what I mean is holding them up here or holding them down here. So the reason for this is these things automatically mess up your position. So if I put my hands down like this, I'm dropping my shoulder and I'm probably going to get pitched forward like this. If my hands are up too high, I may be inclined to kind of sit back too far. And when you hold your hands too high, you may be subconsciously messing with your horse's mouth a little too much. So the ideal place for your hands when you're riding is right above the horse's withers. I like to say maybe 2 or 3 inches from the horse's withers. And that way, look at from the horse's mouth to my hand, it's a straight line. So that's a good rule of thumb to remember, is you kind of want a straight line from your horse's mouth to your hand. Rather, if it's up here, it's more of an angle, and down here it's going to be an angle. So I want it perfectly straight across, and I can have more control and communicate more effectively when my hands are where they need to be. Okay guys, time to talk about something really important and something that annoys me so bad is when I'm riding, what in the world do I do with this loop, this extra rein? It's always getting in the way. I'm always having to fumble with my reins. It's going over my reins. So annoying. So if you have the same problem as me and you cannot stand this extra rein loop you have, what you can do is to get it out of the way, you can tuck it under your reins. And so how you do that is you can hold your reins like this, with your hands wide apart. You see how the loop is in the middle? So then what you're gonna do, and I'll fold it towards you guys so you can see, is I'm gonna fold the loop so it goes under my rein like that. And that way it's under my rein, out of the way. Sometimes you'll get over the rein, and that's when it gets annoying because it kind of messes with how you're communicating. So I want to make sure that loop goes under my rein and it's out of my way so I don't even have to think about it. So next we're going to talk about rein length and what is the proper length of your reins as you ride. So you don't want your reins too short so that your arms are straight and you're all up in the horse's mouth and you constantly feel like you're pulling back. You don't want your reins too long so that when I go to stop, my elbows go past my side. Or the horse freaks out and I suddenly don't have control. So you want to find a good rein length that you'll have control of, but you're not in your horse's face. One good rule of thumb here is I want to be able to have my reins so that I can just slightly move my hands to apply pressure, but also slightly move them to release the pressure. So this all comes back to what we were talking about having even reins. When you put your elbows at your side and you hold your reins so you can kind of feel your contact on the horse's face, this is a great rein length. So I can give my hands and release that pressure, but I can also hold them steady and hold that pressure. So that's a great way to find the length of rein you need, but you also just need to make sure you're not all up in your horse's face all the time, or your reins aren't too long so that you don't have control. So now that we've covered how to correctly hold your reins, let's talk about now how you can effectively use them. So if you're new to horseback riding, understanding pressure and release is vital to being a good horse trainer and just communicating with your horse overall. So what does pressure and release mean? Well, I'm going to show you guys an example. Let's say I want Tucker to bring his head back to my knee. So I'll apply the pressure by bringing my hand to my hip, and as soon as he brings his head back to my knee and he gives to that pressure, I'll release. And horses learn by the release of pressure that something's correct. So if they respond correctly, you need to release the pressure, and that's kind of a reward for them, and then they quickly learn, oh, that's what I was supposed to do. So when you're riding, that's important to remember, is if you're asking your horse to do something, you're going to apply the pressure, and when they respond correctly, you release it. So one mistake I see a lot of riders make is when they are trying to stop their horse or halt their horse, what they'll do is they'll start pulling on the reins to stop the horse will stop, but then they'll keep pulling on the reins and the horse will start walking backwards. So that's one thing it's important to remember. As soon as your horse stops, you can release the pressure and just let them stand. So like I mentioned before, this concept of pressure and release is vital to communicating with your horse properly. So not only can you do it as you ride them, but you can also do it as you train them on the ground and work with them there. And so we have a ton of videos on groundwork. Groundwork is great for building relationships with your horse and also kind of establishing yourself as the leader in the relationship. So I'll put a link in the description to a bunch of different videos we have on that topic. So if you're new to riding, another thing to take note of is that you want to keep your cues subtle. In the beginning, the only way you may understand it is to make your cues big. So like if I want to steer him, I'll bring my hand out to here, bring my hand out to here. When I want him to go faster, I'll kick him real big. But as you continue to ride, you'll start to develop really subtle cues and subtle ways of communicating with your horse. So ideally, you want to do the smallest movement possible to ask your horse to do something. So at some point, I just want to be able to squeeze my fingers and have my horse turn the direction I want them to. And this way, it's just perfecting your riding, and it's also teaching your horse to respond to the slightest cue rather than having to have some big movement for the horse to respond. So it's also great for horse training. So if you haven't been riding horses for that long, you may only think that there's one way to communicate with your horse, which is through the reins. But actually, there's many ways you can communicate with your horse. You can use your seat and you can use your leg as well. So as you continue to advance in your riding, it's important to start to learn how to communicate with your horse using these different cues. So believe it or not, there are riders who are able to just communicate with their horse just using their seat and their legs. They don't even need their reins. This is a great skill to build. It will make you a better horseback rider, because there are horses where sometimes just using the reins doesn't work with them. If you're riding a very forward horse, you may feel like you're constantly pulling on their mouth. But once you understand how to use your seat and your leg to ride those type of horses, it'll make a world of difference when it comes to riding them. So did you guys know that liking a video can push that video out to more viewers? So that means we can potentially be helping more people. So if you got anything out of this video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel.